If you read the title of this, you may be thinking, another reader. You review books. Why are you reviewing an anime? I am not reviewing the anime Harem in the Labyrinth of Another World. I am reviewing the web novel it is based on. Slave Harem in the Labyrinth of the Other World. A little different wording. You could tell the girl is the same though from the cover, and we all know why they didn't call it Slave Harem, because sex slave sounds really bad. But harem in the Labyrinth of the World, yeah, that's every other web novel. Harems, they're a thing, but he didn't buy them. In this one, he just buys them. So let's go over the description real quick. A man was about to commit suicide and decided to search for a way to die on the internet, but then he found an odd site that asked a lot of questions and had a point-based system that allows you to create skills for a character. He took interest in it, and when he was done setting his character, he was asked, "You will now be transported to a world with the settings you chose. Coming back is not possible. Do you still accept?" Without thinking much of it, he pressed yes and found himself in another world with the skills he chose to have. So, isekai setup, yada yada. We all know how this goes. Now, the reason I'm reviewing this is I stopped reading this I stopped on chapter 215. That was in 2016. It is currently 2022. There's been 10 chapters in 5 years for this book. Not even 5 years, because the last one was 2021. So, first off, that release schedule, terrible. But let's talk about the book itself, because I was amazed when I read online that this was going to get an anime adaptation. For 2 reasons. One, the sex scene. I mean, come on. I watched a little bit of the anime just to see what it was, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm too old for this. Like, 5 years ago, me was a young kid who was horny and would read stuff like this. It's smut. And that's why I was like, really? It's getting a 12-episode anime? And the other reason I didn't understand why I was getting an anime is not because of the sex and the sex slaves and all that. It's because the actual plot of the book is terrible. You know, a lot of people will argue it's a slice of life isekai, but I can't speak for the anime because I literally did not watch it. I'm reviewing the book right now. But in the book, the author will just go through and the character will be like, if I spend this much on this mana for this skill point, it's just an Excel spreadsheet the character is basically making for running through the labyrinth. And he does that chapter after chapter after chapter, and the numbers just change. That's all that's really changing. It is extremely repetitive. And that's one of the reasons I couldn't understand why people read it. You know, I read up to 215 when it was out back in 2016. Like, the fact that back then I finished any book I read. I'm a little more picky now, but I am still amazed people will read it. And I'm just going to read in its entirety one of my favorite comments on this book. Before you decide whether or not to read this novel, let me give you an important warning. Are any of the following extremely important to you? If they are, then this novel is probably not for you. Fast-paced plot. Big, bad, evil guy that the protagonist is trying to overcome. Exciting, intense battles in the labyrinth of another world. A big plot like the protagonist trying to save his family from the evils of the government, or trying to get rid of corruption in the world, or anything like that. The MC quickly getting his harem together all at once. Because if those things are important to you, then you should probably give this a miss. But, amplified. Why did you rate it 5 out of 5, and why should anybody read it if it doesn't have any of that stuff? Good question, imaginary commenter. I just made up. It's simple, really. It's because it is incredibly comfortable, and once it gets going, and it lets me release my frustration from many years of romantic comedies. So, I'm gonna stop right there. This is amazing. I love the it lets me release my frustrations. We all know what this guy's talking about, right? I mean, if you know anything about this series, let me release my frustrations from many years of romantic comedies. Bro, just watch porn, man. Like, this is not good. The story and the sex scenes don't really have much to do with each other. I mean, he gave this review in 2015. It was about 200 chapters out then. And let me tell you something. There's no point to reading this book now, because 10 chapters are released in 5 years. There's never going to be a finish to this story. And so as I say that, I'm going to stop reading it in its entirety, because he goes over pretty much the thing where, like, he buys a new sex slave every 35 chapters. He spends 35 chapters making money to buy a sex slave. First off, that's weird. Looking back at it from, like, my older viewpoint, my modern standard, that's weird. That's just a weird premise. And then he's like, he says that's it. That's honestly enough to put in my top reads. And I'm just like, amazing. That's one of my favorite comments on, like, that has 160 likes. I love it. I love that comment. Now, I did watch one episode to, like, get a gist, and I kind of skipped around because I know the plot of the book and the show because I've read it. It's in my drop novels list as well. I completely dropped this. I will never come back to this because I know the author is never going to finish this. I mean, he's on hiatus. It's not coming back. But the fact that there's a lot of 5-star reviews. There is a lot of 1-star reviews as well. But the fact that some people are like, yeah, this is a 5 out of 5 is insanely funny. Because it's like, you could just read porn, man. I feel like a lot of it might be from a younger audience, because I read it when I was young. And honestly, it's for the best. The 1-star comments kind of sum it up pretty well. It's trying to be slice of life, but it fails horribly. But here's the reason it fails horribly. There's very little world building. A majority of the novel is spent in the labyrinth, but not really exploring the labyrinth, just like running the numbers on the spells, running the numbers on who can attack and who can't attack. It's just, it seems like the author is in real time writing out how the fight's gonna go damage wise, and then just leaves the notes in. This novel, honestly, honest review, no one should ever read it. There is quite literally better porn plots than the plot of this novel. And that's what most people are reading it for, to the excitement of buying a new sex slave. It is a terrible fantasy that should never, I mean, this is clearly the author just writing a fantasy. It's a little weird. Someone should check the author's basement. But besides that, the actual book is terrible. This is like the only book that I've read, I'm gonna say pretty much in its entirety, because I haven't read 10 chapters, but he released a few chapters a year. Like, he has given up on this book, the author. I would give this a 0 out of 10. There's never going to be a conclusion to it. The author is just cashing his check with the anime. He's done. This is a do not read.